All right, guys, this is Norvell Central coming back at you with a YouTube video. This is the first time I've actually done a YouTube video in quite some time. I've gotten out of it a little bit. My Twitter and Instagram account, as you see at the bottom of the screen, I have been able to post a lot of my content there, but super excited to kind of get back into the swing of things. As Florida State's kicking off against Boston College, I wanted to do a Dublin, Ireland, Georgia Tech preview, and then obviously I didn't really want to do a post-game preview at this point because, well, Florida State took a devastating loss, 24-21, heartbreaking loss for Mike Norvell and his coaching staff that goes through there. They had high expectations, and the season is still not over, as Desmond Howard likes to say from ESPN. But you got doubters like Paul Feinbaum as well as Greg McElroy that have continued to doubt Florida State and their abilities. It basically proved at this point Florida State did not show what it should have shown on the field, and obviously you're just having to go back to the drawing board. No better way than Boston College at this point. You actually had a scare last year. The 2023 team was very, very talented, but you only won 31-29 after having a fourth or a late third quarter lead of 31-10. So you really thought that Florida State was going to go through with that game, but then they kind of choked there at the end and almost lost. So just kind of excited to see how Florida State kind of goes through this season and how it kind of continues to bounce back through that. Castellanos is their quarterback, dual threat option, had over 2,000 passing yards. Just super excited to see what this defense is going to be able to do because, as we saw last week, Georgia Tech wanted to run the football. They had 190 yards rushing, and this was a Georgia Tech offense that wanted to establish the run early and often, as Brent Key had talked about in his postgame conference. He just wanted to run the ball, and that was exactly what they did. Florida State did nothing to stop it. His average ground yards before even contact was 3.5. I mean, Florida State is definitely got to be able to stop that and be able to do something there. You got a guy like Trayshawn Ward, who was a former Seminole, preferred walk-on at one point, and then Robichon as well. He's another running back that they had from last year, 780 yards and 8 touchdowns. Two running backs that are going to be fantastic, might even be NFL prospects at this point. Lewis Bond, a 5'11 receiver, was another guy that their returning receiver from last year. He had 646 yards and 7 touchdowns. So just kind of seeing how this offense kind of goes. They're going to be able to run the ball. And even with that speedy wide receiver, you never really know. They were actually 13th in the FBS in rushing, so right behind Georgia Tech from last season. So just kind of looking at everything there, Castellanos had 305 passing yards, 95 rushing yards, and he had 2 total touchdowns. So really, when you look at that, they allowed 31. I think it was 31 in the FBS in sacks allowed from last season. So defensive ends didn't even have a sack from last game. So you just have to be able to generate some kind of pressure. There was no sacks at all. There was only 3 tackles for loss. So Florida State's going to have to do a very, very good job there to be able to kind of do that. Now, the good news, Mike Norvell wants to establish the run. That is his offense. That is his offense in a nutshell of what he wants to do. You got a guy like Roydell Williams, who he really likes. You know, he had those 38 total rushing yards that he had coming into the game with a touchdown, but you wanted to see more. Lawrence Toafili had that 28-yard touchdown in the first drive, the scripted drive that went really, really, really well. But just kind of figuring out what Florida State wants to do on their offensive side of the ball is the biggest thing. You talk about in the post-game conference, you talk about a guy like Jalen Lucas, who only had 3 basically opportunities and touches. You want to see more out of him. He's a speedier back, 5'7", 5'8". He's basically, you blink and he's gone at that point. So you really want to see Jalen Lucas be able to be an effective weapon. Lawrence Toafili, the same thing. You want to see him out of the backfield. You want to see him rushing the football a little bit more. I do think Keziah Holmes can be an effective weapon. You saw what Cam Davis does when he blocks, and as well when he catches the ball out of the backfield. I wish he would have caught that screen pass. He had a couple of good runs there, but just kind of excited to see how he develops as a true freshman. They've got backs. They've got opportunities there. You got to have some receivers step up. Having Hakeem Williams not being there really hurt. I mean, having a 6'4" receiver that you can be able to kind of rely on. You had a guy like Ja'Kai Douglas who was 5'9". You have Malik Benson who was 6'1". You know, you have those options in the offense, but they're not very tall. You got a guy like Elijah Moore who was a true freshman on the bench. He didn't really play or anything, but you're wanting to see more out of that offense there. So hopefully they can be able to kind of get some passes down the field. You saw in that last offensive drive that Florida State had that they were able to throw it down the middle. They were effective, even though it took them 2 fourth-down conversions at that point. But I do think Florida State had the opportunities in front of them to be able to do what they needed to do. You look at Boston College from last season. They only had 13 sacks as defense last season. You know how hard it is to get 13 sacks in 12 games? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This defense was not great. They definitely left a lot to be desired. Vinny DePalma is actually a defensive leader that they have, a linebacker. He had 92 tackles last year. Then you had Elijah Jones, who is actually in the NFL. He had 5 interceptions from last season. The other 3 defenders on that team that had an interception, they all had just one. So, I mean, he basically quadrupled what they had from last season. So, just kind of looking up who will step up for DB for them. I definitely think that Florida State's going to have to get some of those receivers in easier opportunities, some more things in space. I definitely think that Florida State can be able to do that because this is an offense where playmakers are made. So I definitely think Mike Norvell can be able to kind of go through that process with everything. On the defensive side of the ball, you saw guys like Joshua Farmer and Dale Jackson getting pushed back and getting in some run gaps and everything. Marvin Jones Jr. as well as Patrick Payton didn't really play well. But Ohea did actually play pretty well in limited reps. You know, you might be able to see him more because I think John Papuchis talked about in an earlier media session during game week was talking about he was one of the most effective run stoppers on the defense. So just kind of seeing him a little bit more. You didn't really see any of Justin Cryer, and I really thought that there was going to be a little bit more there. I know a lot of fans kind of criticize Omar Graham Jr. Hopefully, he kind of gets back into the swing of things. I know he had a bad injury last year, and just kind of getting back into the swing of things, I think will be kind of important for him. You know, you got a guy like DJ Lundy who had that huge tackle for loss and then really didn't show much the rest of the game. So Cam Riley did an okay job. I know he had some efficient tackles there, but you just want to see a little bit more. Probably the best guy on defense was probably Shaheem Brown. I mean, at safety, you're wanting to kind of bring him more in the box this game. Hopefully, you're wanting to kind of stack the box, just like Georgia Tech did against you. You want to be able to kind of look at that game plan and kind of go and being able to force Castellanos into being a one-dimensional quarterback. Maybe even spying with a Blake Nicholson, I think, could be an effective option there. Azaria Thomas as well as Ventrell Cypress can be able to kind of be an efficient weapon for you on defensive back. But I really just don't know. It's going to be kind of a hit or miss thing there. Conrad Husty was the starter now at safety instead of Devontae Brown. I still think Devontae Brown is going to play a little bit more. And then Kevin Knowles, the starter at nickel corner instead of Earl Little. I definitely think there's going to be some efficient ways, and I think they're going to test those DBs a little bit more. But the linebacker is going to be huge. You're going to have to be able to spy, especially with those defensive ends as well as those linebackers. And those defensive tackles are going to have to express the line of scrimmage there at that point too. So just kind of seeing what this defense does. How does Adam Fuller adjust to everything? You definitely thought coming out of the second half, you thought he was going to be able to adjust like he always does at that point. He really didn't be able to adjust. So you just got to figure out different factors and different ways that you can be able to adjust everything. And I definitely think this defense can be something special if you give it the opportunities to be successful. But just overall, I just kind of wanted to go over a couple of lines that I have for this week just around college football. I have Georgia and Clemson at the under minus or 47.5. I think that can be an efficient way to go ahead and get some money off of that, as well as Miami, Florida under 54.5. And then I have Florida State minus 15.5. I definitely think this is Florida State's opportunity to be able to take advantage of this. And I definitely think that Florida State can be there, especially with the sold out crowd. I know there's only 55,000 people there, but I definitely think Florida State fans are going to show up and show out, as well as just trying to get that bounce back performance. A little bit of the tidbit here. I definitely think that Jalen Lucas can be able to have an effective weapon there in the special teams aspect. Mike Norvell's always talked about, even in his introductory press conference, that special teams is the thing that matters and builds championship and elite teams. So I definitely think that he factors in special teams and how important it is to this team. Didn't really see that much other than the Ryan Fitzgerald 59 and 52-yard kicks. Mastromano has done a fantastic job so far punting the ball. I wish they would have had that punt at the 1-yard line, but it was a touchback instead. I definitely think Florida State's going to come out hot. And I definitely think that there is an opportunity for Jalen Lucas to get a kickoff return. Maybe not for a touchdown, but I definitely think it could be a long gain. Think about the Trey Benson touchdown to open up the game. What if Jalen Lucas does that? I mean, this crowd would go absolutely insane. But as we saw with that Georgia Tech game, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So really, I think Florida State's going to have to really hunker down in what they want to do. And I definitely think Florida State can be able to be an effective weapon as we go through. But if you want to check out my score prediction, I'm going to have that probably Sunday morning, if I had to take a guess, since the game is Monday morning. But we'll kind of factor it in, and maybe Monday as well. I'm not really too sure. I just kind of want to see how injuries play out with the game and everything. But I will be going. So if anybody has any questions, always DM me on my Instagram and on my Twitter, and I'll definitely be able to follow each and every one of you back if you have any questions. But as always, I hope each and every one of you have a great rest of the day. And as always, go Noles.